Bam.
This is Robert Moseley, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hey man, I appreciate you coming on the show. This is a lot of fun. We're all learning about AI and a little scary, a little exciting, all these different things. And I thought we might take time just to talk about Copy.AI and look at what's this. Tell us about your robot, man. I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a hot space and a hot topic right now. So I work for Copy.AI. So we were actually the very first interface for GPT-3. We gave like the very first interface to allow like the average person to go in and play with GPT-3, which is like, everybody's probably heard of like Chat GPT by now. GPT-3 was kind of like the first like really good version of that. Chat GPT is like kind of what exploded and like put it in everybody's minds. But yeah, so we've been doing this since like 2020. And my job is to work with customers and users who have an accounts just to figure out like, how do you use this stuff? Like what is it capable of? What can it do? What are the implications? I was actually in a meeting yesterday, and at the end of the meeting, a lady asked me, it's like, are we all gonna have jobs still?
Seriously, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
And she was like, I'm the head of HR, like I have to care about this stuff. And I mean,
Yeah,
that's where I think this stuff gets like when you project it out, right? Because if you think about it, like you've probably played with ChatGPT, and like I know that the description for this show was written by Copy.AI, right? So
yeah,
yeah, you're obviously familiar with it. And this is as worse as it's going to be, right? Like every day
right.
from here on out, it's just going to get better and better, which is crazy. Like
It,
it's in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, it's almost going to be a different world entirely.
yeah, it will be a different world entirely. I mean, we're talking about term papers are done. There's no need to, you're going to have to go to, I don't know, I'm just going to invent something here that already exists, but it's going to have to all be oral exams because writing a paper, how in the world, you can just say, do not plagiarize. It's
Yeah,
like, and then bam, you have a term paper and no one would ever know. I mean, it is amazing. And even like today's thing. So when I wrote the description for the episode, I I had to like teach it, right, what I wanted. And then I'm like, that's good enough. That this is a
yeah,
synopsis. It doesn't have to be any better than this. And it might have taken me less time to write it myself, but that's where it is right now, right? And so where are we going to be again in 2 years, 3 years? And part of the
yeah.
reason why is I had to learn how to use it. If I knew how to use it better, the first prompt probably would have worked.
Well, and I think that's kind of a new skill set, right? It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
I do this like every day, all day, right? I'm like embedded in it. And like sometimes I forget, like when people first see this stuff, like it's like they'll look gasp, like they'll say like, wow, like as they see the stuff getting created, right? And like the new skill set's going to be like, how do you just like, I guess like or a computer, right? When a computer
Yeah,
first came out, everybody's like, we're not going to need to know that stuff. That's for nerds or whatever. And now it's like you literally could not do any job almost without,
there it
you
is.
carry it around in your pocket. And like knowing
Yeah,
how to use computers is like now the important skill. You don't need to know how to write cursive anymore. You need to know how to type. And it's
yeah,
like, do you need to know how to write anymore? Or like, so in my mind, like this just becomes something where like everybody becomes like a manager. So instead of like actually having to do the work, like I get to ideate, right? So instead of like writing an article, right, I ideate what articles do I want to write, and now I can write in almost like infinitely more articles. Like like whatever like imaginative idea I can come up with, like I can now execute whether I have the skills or not.
yeah.
And I was actually watching this like interesting thing, and it has nothing to do with like what we do, but it's like tangential to
Right.
the space where I know you're into music and stuff. Um, where now they can do basically like voice synthesis, and it sounds exactly like another person. So I was watching this video where this guy like was like rapping not very well, and he put Kanye's voice over it, and it was like it sounded exactly like Kanye. And it's
Right.
like, okay, so let's say like you're really good at composing music or coming up with beats or something like that, but you have a terrible singing voice, right? Now you could put out one person could put out like really really well written music. You can ask, like you can even do this with Copy.AI. Actually, if you go to like the
Yeah.
chat tool, you can say like, write me write me like guitar tablature for a song in the key of C minor, right? And it'll spit out something pretty basic, and then you can like continuously talk to it and like make it more and more complex.
Yeah. Funny you say that because I'm looking right now at the tab that's open on my computer and I haven't gone into it yet, but I'm looking at speech alone. And I don't know if that's the program you're talking about. It's the same thing. Like any voiceover, any kind of voice, you can do this. And you're right, it is scary. And like, will we have jobs? But I do think that, like, if I'm going to say, like, hey, Copy.AI, I want you to write about my hometown and the era of my youth and tell funny stories that are a little bit, rascalish and everything else. It'll try, but it'll be up to me to say more of this, less of that, and I'll have to manage it or write it myself and say, now take this and improve it or whatever. I don't know. Remove idioms and take this, anything that's cliche. I want you to, in the style of Willem Dafoe, I'd like you to use how he would phrase these things. Bananas.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely do all that, and like you can like play around with that, and that's like the fun stuff. And I think like most people's interactions with it are like pretty like surface level like that, right? Where it's like, write me a poem or like write me a song, and it's fun because it's like, how on earth is this? Like, it almost feels like there's like a like a wizard behind the curtain or something like that that's like typing it on the other end. And that's like, I think like the magic of it, and that's what's captured people's attention. But like there are like true applications for this, and like even with today's technology, it can go much further than that. There's this concept of agents. If you think of like the term agent, it's like somebody doing work on your behalf, right? Like somebody doing something for you. So it's like, so right now, like ChatGPT, GPT-3, GPT-4, like they can generate text. But like text can mean things. Like for instance, like computer programming is just text. Like I can write code and that's just text, right? But then when I put that in the right system and execute it, it becomes an application, right? So it can write applications for you, or it can even decide, it can reason. And like this is up for debate. Like I wonder if it's like, if there's actually, it can fake reasoning, I guess, but I don't know. Like it's hard. Like this is like the philosophical debate where it's like, is it actually reasoning or is it fake reasoning, right?
Yeah.
But does it matter? Like if it looks like reasoning and the reasoning is sound and it's making the right decision, and it can pass the bar exam and it can get like a perfect score in the SAT. Doesn't matter if it's like real reasoning or if it's fake reasoning, if you can trust the decisions that it's making. But when you think of it that way, you can let it, you can give it a task, right? You can say like, and this is one of the things that we are releasing like very soon, is you give it a task. Like I want to take in, I'll just like use your example. I want to take in a zip code of an area and summarize the parks and the restaurants and everything in that area. And then I want to take that information and I want to write a story from my perspective when I was 12 years old, getting into hijinks in that area. And like that can, and then you could have like this, basically this application where the input is a zip code and it'll write you, the output would be like a story that sounds like very legitimate, that mentions things in that area and parks and locations and things like that. So like it has the setting, it'll invent a plot. You can like prompt it a little bit to do that, but then you have an application that does that. So then you could write a story for like every single zip code on in the United States, right? And it'll come up with something that's like mentioning real places. It sounds real. Then you could take that a step further and write like a whole book, or just like for like business applications of this. I mean, like people do this like repetitive sort of tasks all the time, right? Especially with
like
coding.
write show synopsises. I don't ever have to do that again. I want to go back because you're talking about things that are just blowing people's minds, but you're right. You take the zip code and you probably could give it a year, and if not now, soon. 1978 zip code is going to be 92528 or whatever, Sacramento, and tell me like, based upon police reports with whimsical things, what kind of story was, like you're giving it these parameters, and at some point, if you can't already do it, that information all exists. And so you just like, tell me the story and put it, tell me a hero's journey version of it, whatever that thing is, and it'll do it.
I mean, you could go to Copy.AI chat and ask that exact thing right now, and it would work. Because like it's different than ChatGPT. So like ChatGPT is like basically interacting directly with the model, right? And so GPT-4, which is like the latest version, was like trained on a data set up until like September 2021 or something like that. right? So it doesn't have like any information of like any events that occurred. It doesn't have access to all the events. Like basically all you're asking it to do is like, here's my input, right? Now guess what the next word is. And then
Yeah.
process that again and guess what the next word is. And process that again and guess what the next word is. And it does a really good job at spitting out something that sounds like very like logical, right? It's not necessarily fact-based, but like what we've built is a system that uses this kind of like agent architecture that I was referring to, where instead of just like directly writing and guessing what the word and the next word and the next word are until you end up with like your result, first it makes a decision where it's like, okay, what do I need to actually do here? And so if you asked it something like that, if you said like put in zip code like 95006 or research things that happened in the police blotter in 95006 in 1973, and then extract that information, summarize it, and write a story, like ChatGPT or anything like that can't do that right away, because all it's doing is it's guessing the next word, and it probably doesn't have like any like logical information in its system about that.
Right.
But with our system, what it'll do is it'll say, okay, first it goes through a thinking step, and it has like actions that it can take. It can like search, right? That's one of the actions that it can do, search and summarize. And it has like a scrape step and like a bunch of other ones that it can do. You can build your own steps in this, but so it'll know that, okay, first I got to search. So it'll go and it'll search for like police blotter 1973 in this zip code, and it'll summarize some results, right? And then it'll take that summarization and it'll automatically do the next step, which is like a writing step. And it'll actually like write a prompt, like a mini prompt in this like in between step for you to say like, take this information and turn it into a story about, XYZ, like whatever you wanted it to do. And so it's like actually like taking additional actions on your behalf to accomplish the task that you put it up to, right? So it's like kind of like the beginnings of this like agent thing that I was talking about. And when you explore that territory, like things get crazy pretty quick.
They get crazy pretty quick. Right now, by the way, my buddy Lee Newton Rhodes, he's I think he's on LinkedIn. Yeah, he's on LinkedIn. And he's got a good question, like, could it solve crimes, cold cases? So in my world, there's a lot of cold case teams that have come on the show. In my hometown where I grew up in Benicia, there was the Zodiac Killer. And so we think we know who it is now, this guy, Gary Francis Post. But now you could have not just like a mega analysis, but like you could really use Copy.AI to go out and go, prove this point and provide your resources that you did this with. But I also would say this, early on, this was 2 months ago, which is early on for what you guys are doing, you guys move so fast. I said, give me a resume for Pete A. Turner, and it wrote one. And this goes back to your philosophical question earlier. And the guy who they wrote about was incredible. I'm like, well, that guy's a badass. He's got a degree from Michigan. He's got a degree from Georgetown. He had a PhD. And I kind of used and I gave it like my basic, like, this is Pete, use this resource. And it came back with something that wasn't me, right? Impressive, but not me. And so I thought, is this actual reality now? Like, is that resource there so that any chat, any robot can go, well, that's who Pete is. So if you post this and say, hey, this is my Copy.AI resume, did that just make it a fact?
Yeah, I mean, objectively, no. But
right.
I mean, the last few years in the world, it makes you question whether like objective facts exist anymore. But I mean, yeah. I mean, like one thing that you could, and this is like an important thing, right? And especially like we're dealing with like enterprises who are trying to use this in business where like facts matter, right? Like I can't, like if I'm trying to market, say like a medical device to doctors, like I can't have it like saying incorrect things, right? It could kill people. Right. And so it needs to be like factual, right? So like you need, and you can actually like work this in. So it's like you can actually have it fact check itself. And so we have this thing. So there's this like term within like AI in general called like hallucinations, which is exactly what you're describing. Like write me a resume for Pete A. Turner, and it makes stuff up. Like the industry term for that is a hallucination, right? Like it's hallucinating facts about this like person that you asked it to, because like it didn't have anything to go off. So it's like, okay, you asked me to create a resume. I know what a resume looks like. It has work history. It has maybe like an intro and a bio. Then it has like your location, and it has like education history. So I'm gonna write something that like is logical and like takes that format. What you could do is you could like take your LinkedIn URL and like go to like our chat system and like say like, hey, here's my LinkedIn URL, write me a resume. And it'll be fact-based because now it's sourcing it. It's going through that first like search and scrape and summarization step, and then it's doing that. But I mean, like the hallucination thing, I think is interesting because it's kind of what makes this stuff powerful, right? It's like tangential to reality. It's not like 100% embedded
Right.
within reality. So
Yeah.
it can make stuff up, which is great, right? It can write songs that have never existed before. It can write books and stories that are interesting, right? It can write fiction, and that's cool, and
Oh my
that's like
gosh.
makes
Yeah.
it fun, and like that's like creativity, really. If you think of like what
Yeah.
creativity is, it's like it's inventing a new way of thinking about something, right? Or writing
Yeah.
something that's never existed in the universe before, and you kind of like bring it into existence, and it has that capability. So, but if you can harness it and you can like use that to your advantage, even if like you need something that's fact based, you can actually have a step.
Yeah.
So there's like you can like chain prompts together, and you could have like an editorial review step where you're like basically you're telling the model, the AI model, that okay, here's the input, which is like the output from all the previous steps to like say like write your resume, and then your
Right.
final step is editorial review. So you could put in like whatever sort of like criteria you want. You could ask it to check for fact, make sure it doesn't like say anything that could be like offensive in any way or whatever. Um, and then it like fact checks itself, which is super interesting and neat.
Yeah. It's blowing my mind a little bit, and these, and again, you're like with emotions, and I'm big on affect over effect, right? Like, how do I create something that's affective? But I want to go back. You talked about writing a song, and I'm a failed songwriter. I'm terrible at it, and not very good. But it doesn't mean I don't have the concepts, right? And so I love the thought of Johnny Cash has a song called "Don't Take Your Guns to Town," right? And I'm like, what if you wrote that song from the point of view of Tom, the kid, because this is told from the point of view of like a narrator, the
Hmm.
balladeer is telling the story, right? But if we took it from his point, from Tom's point of view, and it's like, no, he's going to town because he's growing up and he wants to go ask this girl to marry him, and he ends up shot, right? That's a whole different perspective and reality that wasn't possible. And I believe Copy.AI could handle that prompt. And even if it didn't nail it on the first try, I can say a little more of this, a little less of that. Make sure that at the end Tom is
Yeah.
killed, but it's because he loves this girl or whatever, right?
So that's super interesting you bring that up because like now you're kind of like understanding like the concept of like chaining prompts and like serializing your steps. So what I would do in that situation is I would like create a prompt and I would like upload like the original lyrics. And I'd say like here's the
Right.
lyrics to a song, and then I would ask it to like extract the main characters. And then I would say like that whatever character you want it written from their perspective, then I would ask it to think about like what motivates this character, like what's going through this person, so how would you think about this from their perspective, and then it'll like
Right.
go through, it'll list things, and then you go now rewrite that song from their
Yes.
perspective, and because it's like gone through this middle thinking step, and this is actually like a really, we use this all the time to improve outputs, but since it's gone through that middle thinking step, like the output, like the final output of the song will be like really really good. And so we do
Yeah.
this for things like we have a lot of customers who will use us for like product descriptions, right? So like I have a product, I don't really know how to like market it very well. And so like the most websites just have like pretty generic like product descriptions, like a sentence or two, sometimes a paragraph and a
Right.
couple bullets. But it's a similar sort of deal. So it's like, okay, here are the specs of this product. So let's say it's like I don't know, a shovel, right? A
Right.
wooden handle. It's 6 feet long. It's a galvanized steel like shovel head, or rounded ergonomic handle. First, you would go write me a basic description for the shovel, and it will, and it'll be pretty good, and it's probably usable. But then you have like another step after that, and like the chain of reasoning that says, now think about different ways that you could use this shovel and how it would improve the owner's life, and then it'll list a bunch of ways that you could use that shovel.
Okay.
And then you
Yeah.
go, now rewrite that description and include some of those things. And then it'll like write this brilliantly written like description that includes like all the ways that you could use the shovel, and maybe like why it's a perfect gift for the holidays or like
Yeah.
whatever, right?
It's just
Yeah.
wild, man. Yeah. So I have a product like that I'm sort of going through this now, and I can get people excited talking about it face to face. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing professional interviews that are biographical, right? Because most people never have a biographic interview done on them ever in their entire life, and I will go to their house and sit in front of Graham or Grandpa or CEO, whoever it is, and I'll do a professional interview with them, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how do I, like if I'm face to face all day long, I can explain it. I can say it costs this much and then people do it. I don't know how to build the copy because that's not what I do. I'm not a copywriter. I could do it, but it'd be like me writing a song. I can rhyme words and write a poem, but I don't know what key it needs to be and read these things. You're telling me that I can use Copy.AI to write my copy to pitch what I would call Recollect, the Recollect Studio biographical interview process. I can do this, and I no longer am bound up by that step. I've got plenty of other steps that were, cameras and lighting, all these other things, but the copy part, yes, I'll have to prompt and do my reasoning, but that problem is largely solved.
Yeah, I mean, this is another super common use case, right? Like what you're talking, I mean, okay, maybe I'm like interpreting your thing wrong, but like a very common use case would be like sales type use cases, right? So like, I'm just like thinking about it from your scenario. Where it's like you have this like really great idea, like you want to pitch, like, hey, I would love to like come to your house and interview you. And so what you could do is you could like set up a chain of prompts. This is like what like internally we call a workflow. It's like just like a system of like things that have to happen, and at the end is like the output. That's like the thing that you want. So for you, it would be like the pitch, whether it's like an email or a letter that you like print off and mail to them, or however you want to like get it in their hands. But like basically, you could say, research this person, tell me interesting facts about their history. You could like send like, social media links or like whatever. It'll like gather a list of things interesting about this person. And then you can go like, okay, now that we know this about this person, here's what I want to do. And here's my idea, and turn this into a pitch, right? And then at the end, you would have like basically a pitch that'd be personalized for every single person that you would want to interview, but you wouldn't actually have to go out and necessarily like do all of that research and like write the copy yourself. It would do it for you.
Mind blowing. That's crazy. That's crazy. So can this thing, we talked earlier, we kind of brought the topic up, I didn't get the chance to close the loop. Can this thing solve crimes? Can it do a meta-analysis where it's looking at all these sources and across departments? And, like in my role, I used to be a spy, right? And so open source intel was a huge thing because a lot of stuff is just known. So could this thing be used to solve crimes?
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, then you're getting into like weird. What was that? What was that Tom Cruise movie with like the twins that were like in the nutrient bath that were like predicting future crimes and stuff? Like Philip K. Dick, I can't remember. But like then you're kind of getting into that territory, and I think like that. So yes, it definitely could, right?
Let me ask this question a different way. Let's make it a little more, a little less like, whatever that movie was called. The thing with Tom Cruise. What if we took this and we looked for the hallmarks of a false confession? Because there are absolutely hallmarks. There's a guy named Saul Kassan I had on the show. And, the police lock in on they're doing their best, right? But they lock in like it's going to be the son. It's always the son. And so they start with that logic step, but it's a misstep. And so they basically convince this person to confess, and now they've got to go through. And so then you could say, hey, I'm a lawyer. I want Copy.AI to go through all of the known things and find a pattern and say, this is the evidence, like this is happening all the time. I'm kind of making this up.
Well, you could use it. I mean, you could use it as a research tool for sure. You could say like, hey, here are the facts of the crime that was committed, and here are all the players, right? Like whether they're like current suspects or not. And then you could say like, given these facts and the relationships and everything, like list motives for each person and why they might commit this crime. So I'd look at it more as like a research tool. I don't think it'll ever, and I don't think we should ever like take the result of that output and like throw somebody in the slammer because like some AI model said that they probably with like 98% probability committed the crime. But like it can definitely help people. I mean, you always like especially like when you watch the movies, like the usual suspects, right? When he like drops the coffee cup because he has this like eureka moment of like, oh my god, I know who Kaiser Sose is. Like it could help you get there faster, right? Because it can go through all the different things and like help find your blind spots and things that you may not be considering or like thinking of, for sure.
Yeah, or you could just have it like, and I want a plot twist here, and I want a plot twist here. You could map that out and just drive people bananas trying to figure out who it was, because that's the thing is like you have the string and you go through the, like all the murder mysteries are big movies right now, right? And you could say, write the craziest movie mystery ever in the style of Agatha Christie and make sure that there are 5 plot twists in the last 10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it would work. It could do that. It could do that. It would probably take like some editorial review, right? But it would like, so how
Yeah.
long would that take to write that screenplay? Right. And I think this is like where I mean, there's a lot of people that look at this like technology as kind of like dystopian in a way, and I definitely think that there are ways to use this like in a dystopian manner. But there's also like utopian ways to use it, right? So like say like you have a great idea, it's the seeds of an idea, right? But maybe you're just like not motivated enough. Like you're great at like the idea part, but you're just not a good like executor,
Yeah.
right? Like now you have a tool that can do the execution part for you, and you can take some of your ideas to fruition. So you could like have a great idea for like a movie, and it could write the screenplay for you. Then you could like go in and just like give suggestions and like edit it back and forth, and it'll build your vision for you essentially, right? And probably
I have
edit
a
some stuff
question.
there.
I gotta ask
Yeah.
another. This is amazing, man. You're blowing me away with this thing. So my buddy Jeff has written a fantastic book. It's the Guide for Every Screenwriter. And so I could say, using the lessons in the Guide for Every Screenwriter by Jeff Calhoun, I want you to write a screenplay with the following premise and all these kind of things. And so you're teaching it right like Jeff, like what he's instructed, which is a great way to write things. And it has the capability of doing that because that book's existed for, I don't know, 4 years now.
Yeah. I mean,
Bang.
yeah, it could, especially if you give it like samples of writing first, right?
Right.
It's like one of the current limitations, I guess, with this stuff is like, so these are all based on like a thing called a transformer, right? Which like
Okay.
basically like you give it a block of text, and this is a generative transformer. So it basically like predicts the next word, and then it reruns and predicts the next word, and reruns and predicts the next word. That has like a limitation because like it has to run everything at once. It has a limitation to like the number of like total words, right? So if your prompt is too big, there's not much room for like generation of stuff, right? And if your
Okay.
prompt is,
Yeah.
but if your prompt is smaller, then there's a lot more room for like generation of stuff. I think like that will go away. I don't know if it's like quite at the point where it could write a full book. There's tricks you could use though. You could like
Right.
write it chapter by chapter in that
Sure.
style, summarize
Right.
the previous chapter, pass the summary of the previous chapter and all the key points into the next step, and then write the second chapter, and like so on and so forth, right? Ways to do it.
Yeah. One of the things that we're seeing, like me, that I've seen, like the zeitgeist about this. Obviously, there's the fear, and look, this thing's coming. It's here, right? So we got to deal with it. But also the belief that the AI has like a more of a, we'll just say a progressive lean, right? So if you're a Greek Orthodox conservative person who lives in the panhandle of Texas, will this thing make sense to you, or is it truly apolitical? Can you make it apolitical? Could you make it political on your side? How does
Yeah, I
that
mean
work?
yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like it's trained on. So if you think of it, so basically like GPT, ChatGPT, if I'll
Right.
just use like the term that everybody knows, like ChatGPT was trained on like 10% of the available internet up until like 20, right? So it has like historical writings and things like that. But think about like where do most writings come from? They come from like modern Western countries that have had access to the internet. Like
Right.
it's not going to have much from say like sub-Saharan Africa where there's just like not a lot of internet access, and therefore there's just not a lot of like their thought that would be available to even train them out. So there's definitely inherent bias. Like you'll see this too, like when some of the things that you try within like ChatGPT or whatever, like it has its shortcomings, right? Like it will write. Like I think somebody put it through like one of those like political spectrum testers or something, like like those
Oh,
like
okay.
quizzes
Yeah.
that you can do online, and like it came out like left, like
Uh,
just not like super like crazy like
Either way, it
you
came
know
out somewhere though.
left.
Yeah.
It came out like left of center for sure,
Okay.
right? And I think there was like some blowback about that. Like I don't know if there would ever be necessarily a way, or would you even, I don't know, that's a super interesting question. Like philosophically, like yeah, it wouldn't be able to necessarily represent everybody, but what you can do is like seed it with an idea, and you can teach it, right? And that's like kind of like a lot of like there's this term prompt engineering, which you've probably heard of, where basically you can provide it like examples, and like what you're doing is you're kind of like teaching it like,
Right.
here's some things written by this author, here's some things, like some philosophical ideas from like this like school of thought. And then if
Right.
that's in your prompt, then it kind of adopts that, and it'll like write in that style or like along that line of thinking, but it's still
Yeah.
like slightly biased. I don't know if it'll ever get it necessarily fully away from that, because it's just kind of like it's trained on recent information. So like some of the stuff that it spits out like wouldn't make sense to somebody maybe 20 years from now or 20 years before.
Right. Yeah, and then I guess if you took two characters and you said, I want Thomas Sowell to have a debate with Kendi, right? And so these guys are obviously totally opposite ends of thought and everything. And you said, I want them to sort out on rent control or something like that, right? Whatever the topic is going to be. And I'm asking you to guess what the computer would do, but would the Copy.AI, would it favor Kendi because it has that slightly left of center? Or would it, I mean, how in the world would it handle this very challenging debate? I mean, that would be insane to have it do that and then actually have those two cats talk about that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm actually typing this in right now because I'm curious.
Oh, are you really? Okay, good. Okay, I'll vamp while you do that. Right now, Robert Moseley also was a cat on Magna PI. He passed away recently. He flew the helicopter. The helicopter always broke, but that was just a plot device. A MacGuffin, if you will. So, what is it? Has it come up with anything yet?
Yeah, it did. So it's generating stuff right now. So it's like, so it invented a moderator. So it says, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's debate on rent control between our esteemed guests, Thomas Sowell and John F. Kennedy. We are honored to have these icons with us to discuss this pivotal issue. Let's begin with opening statements. Mr. Sowell, please share your thoughts on rent control. Thank you. Rent control is essentially a price ceiling imposed by the government on rental housing. While it may seem like an attractive solution to address housing affordability, it ultimately leads to a myriad of unintended consequences. Rent control results in the reduction of available housing, deterioration of existing housing stock, and inefficient allocation of resources. It disincentivizes property owners from investing in maintenance and improvements, thereby contributing to urban decay. John F. Kennedy, thank you for your perspective, Mr. Sowell. While I understand your concerns, I believe that rent control could be an effective tool in ensuring that all citizens have access to affordable housing. In a time of, so like it understands like what side of the debate they take, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that sounded so lovely. I mean,
right? Like, it's really well written.
Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting, right? And so
yeah,
like think about this, right? So like there's other tools out there which like basically can create like a video avatar version of yourself, which looks like real video. And then you have like the voice. So you can put their voices. You could like literally create a video that is like the text is generated, the video is generated, and the audio, like the debate never actually happened. It could be represented. They would fool people. They'd be like, I don't remember this debate. It was shot in 4K. That's crazy. Like how they get that? Like, but I mean, it's interesting.
And that's today. I mean, like today, you could make that thing happen, and maybe it wouldn't be. Like I remember back in the early '90s when we started to get polygon game base, and you're looking like that looks like an actual TIE fighter, you know. And I did look at it like that's clown stuff, you know, but. Good God. I mean, now you see video games, they oftentimes you have to look twice, like, oh, that's a video game, but only because you look twice, so you can be fooled in the first look.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like even like if you think of some of the image generation stuff that's out there,
yeah,
it's very like a year ago, like it was very like ethereal and kind of like uncanny valley-ish. Like you could always tell it was like AI generated because it would have these like swirls, and it was like kind of like the hallmark of like AI generated stuff. And then like something happened like 6 months ago where it just got like super good. Like some like things like Midjourney, simple prompts will generate like photographic quality stuff. They'll have like weird things still, like somebody's eye will be like slightly closed, or they'll have like six fingers, but the sixth finger will still look like a but it'll still look like an eye, right? Like the sixth finger will still look like a finger. It's interesting. Like I don't know. I mean, like all this always like ends up down this like philosophical path. Like at least for me, it's like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, is it art or is it not? You know, like what does that mean for actual artists? Like what if AI can generate a better photograph of Mount Whitney than any human possibly could?
Yeah. What if it could extrapolate a point of view that's not possible for a human or even a drone? You know, like, and it just can do something. It's crazy. My buddy Tom, he is a professional illustrator, and it drives him crazy. You know, look, they use a lot of modern tools, and it helps them to create faster. but they're in a business where you have to say yes, you have to deliver, and it has to be amazing. There's just no room for flaws. And so part of me says, hey, this is going to be great. You're going to be able to do your work with less stress and more productive. But also, he's like, we're not going to get credit for things that we created. So someone's going to go in the style of, his name's Tom Perkins, in the style of Tom Perkins drawing Ultraman, right? And he won't get a royalty for that, like he's entitled to in the current business model. What are your thoughts on royalties and that kind of art creation?
Yeah, I mean, at some point there's going to have to be. I mean, I'm not a policymaker, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I get you. Yeah.
Like, but I mean, I think like Andrew Yang in some ways was pretty prescient, right? Because like if you follow this through to its like inevitable conclusion, like there's just simply going to be like less need for people to do jobs, right? So like you can go back and you could say like, well, you know, everybody said the same thing before the Industrial Revolution. Like I think this is like very akin to like a modern day Industrial Revolution. It's like an AI revolution. It's going to have the same or maybe even like greater impact on the economy. And the Industrial Revolution was arguably a great thing for humanity, right? Like it increased like everybody's lifespan. Everybody had like access to things that they never had access to before. Quality of life like shot up through the roof. New jobs were created that like didn't exist before. So now you didn't have to toil away as a serf on a farm for like 35 years until you died of old age. Like, and this could like I don't know. I can't predict what's going to happen there, but I think like there's definitely going to be this awkward period. Probably like that could be like dangerous if we don't approach it in the right way, where it's like, what do we do during this time where it's like overnight these jobs no longer are needed because it can be done better and faster and at much infinitely higher scale via AI.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I mean, how many lawyers right now are like, oh fuck, you know, like, and then a practice is like 25 years gone, you know, and you're going to say right in the style of this legal brief, that's it. Like that's going to happen. I mean, it is happening.
Imagine,
you know?
so I mean, like our judicial system won't change, right? So we'll still have like jurors, and the arguments on each side are going to be AI. Like just like I created that debate between like fictional Thomas Sowell and fictional John F. Kennedy.
JFK,
yeah. Like it could be like you have like all the lawyers' arguments are like all the docs are summarized by AI. The opening statements are written by AI because it's better than what they could do. And then you have this like debate between artificial intelligence versus artificial intelligence. And then you have humans deciding which artificial intelligence made the better point. Like,
well, and then
but maybe that'll help though. Like maybe that'll help with objectivity. Because if you think about, like, say, like the O.J. Simpson case, right? If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Like everybody knows that line, right? And like it's catchy, right? Or like you'll have like politicians will come around, and they'll come out with just like a slogan, right? And that'll help them win. Like hope and change, or like make America great again. These are like easy things that you can remember, right? So let's say like you remove the human element, which can like if you're a juror and like you like maybe like one of the prosecution lawyers like more charming and handsome than the defense lawyer, maybe that skews your perceptions, right? So like maybe you could have like an AI that like wouldn't have it's not handsome, it's like doesn't have those things, so it's reasonable, it passed the bar exam, and it does a really good job of presenting the facts, and like you can kind of remove those biases from like judicial decisions. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but like so I mean like like there's a lot of debate and talk around like some of the dystopian outcomes that are possible from this, right? And like I'm not downplaying those at all. Those are definitely things that we need to watch out for and like regulate now versus later to ensure that that stuff doesn't happen. I was actually just talking with one of my colleagues earlier, and he was telling me about some guy who was watching like a Twitter space. He's like, I called everybody in my family and I told them like we had like a safe passcode, because now you can like I could modulate your voice, impersonate you, and call your mom and say like, hey mom, I'm like hard up for money, do you mind like transferring money to my like bank account, it's this, and it sounds like you, and like I spoofed your phone number and it came from your phone number, so it showed up on your mom's phone as you, sounds exactly like you, but it's all written by AI, and like the voice is yours because you have lots of podcasts out there, so I could train a model on your voice to sound exactly like you. And like that sounds like a little like paranoid and like crazy, but honestly like that's something that somebody could do that today. Like that's something that could happen. But on the flip side, there's all the other positive outcomes from that too. And it's like we just gotta like tip the scales and make sure that like the positive outcomes are given room to breathe and given the fuel that they need. And the negative outcomes are well regulated, and yeah,
I can't
crazy
remember the
times.
guy said. I used to have a show called Popping the Bubble. We would talk to a lot of startup companies and founders. And one of the guys, well, two different quotes that I always say is, and I can't remember either people that said it off the top of my head, but one of them is never bet against software engineers because they just constantly improve. They close gaps, even if it's a tiny gap, they just always are improving. So you never bet against them. And the other thing is as long as the pace of innovation is faster than the pace of automation, we'll always be fine because there's always that edge that we can go towards. But it seems like automation is going really fast right now.
Yeah, I mean it's faster. Like honestly, I think like right now, like even okay, let's say like we paused all AI like research and deployment of like new
Yeah,
models right now. Like we have decades of ideation ahead of us just to like take advantage of all the capabilities of like what already exists today. You
yeah,
know, and so like this is the first time I've actually felt where it's like you're not bogged down anymore by like you come up with an idea that you can execute it immediately, right? And it
yeah,
doesn't have to be
yeah.
a writing task, like I said. Like it's yeah, you're right. Like the scales have tipped. That inflection point has occurred for sure.
Yeah. And that's scary for people. And if you have a job, I mean, like, and this is like we did a show on the title industry, and we're the only country that has title insurance and this kind of thing. But when you go to do that title search, you can have a robot do it, and it's been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years now, right? I mean, you don't have to have some lady in Kansas City going through a file cabinet, which is what they did until very recently,
Yeah,
and confirming, yes, this is the only file on case, this person actually owns this house. Now I just have a robot do it, and it's like that.
yeah.
And so that whole system has been changed, and the entire industry has changed because of that one little crevice being closed by software.
Yeah. Well, I mean, too, like my grandma, she was like a telephone, like the operator. She actually like picked up who do you want to talk to and put the plug
Uh,
in the hole for George, her husband, and connect them, right? And like that got automated
yeah,
away. So I
yeah,
mean, I think like
yeah,
that's like the stuff where it's like, do you need like, if you can automate it away, it's a good thing,
right,
right? Because that's not like necessarily like a productive job. And this is
right,
like this is why I'm really optimistic about it, right? Because like
yeah,
in my mind, like the productive stuff. Like say so like I'm like an engineer by trade. So like I don't write as much code as I used to, but like when I'm writing code, am I really being productive? Or what if I
right,
could like come up with the idea for the application and AI could write the code for that application for me? Then I could go from idea
yeah,
to execution much faster. And just from like an economic productivity standpoint, like my time was much better
yeah,
used, right? Instead of
yeah,
like typing, coding, and debugging and doing all that, like I just assigned that task to a
yeah,
machine and it did it for me. And I think the world improves because of that. Because like now we're making
right,
more stuff. We're producing
yeah,
more stuff. Like we're producing like more experiences. We're producing more entertainment. We're producing things and technologies that can make people's lives better at an ever increasing, almost like exponential, far greater
yeah.
than exponential rate. You know?
And then if your competition isn't doing that, like if you're like, yeah, we got a school teaching Python, come on down, you're gonna be like, you don't gotta do that. You need to learn these kind of prompts, and this is what right looks like, and you're
Yeah.
doing it in a fraction of the time. And these people are doing the best Python coding ever. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, that
Well, I
changes
mean, it's
everything.
like even with that, it's like self-healing too, because it'll maybe like write the first version. And so this is like what I mean, like these like chained prompts again. It's like write this.
Right.
Here's the thing I want to execute. Write this in Python. You like
Yeah.
write the function in Python, and then you go, okay, now yeah, you deploy that, you run it, and it doesn't run, it fails for whatever reason. Then you
Right.
have like the next step in the workflow that goes like, what's wrong with this code? It'll identify the error, and I'll rewrite it and fix it. It'll rewrite it and fix it, and boom, now it works. And you move on to like the next function, the next function.
Right.
Yeah, you can recursively do all of this stuff. Like this technology already exists today.
Some of the things that we learned about in AI, we actually have a guest coming up about 2 or 3 weeks. His name's Attila Haidu, and he built a robot that would look at possible protocols from all the known protocols for cancer solutions for things like glioblastoma, which is this horrible terminal brain cancer. And so you
Yeah,
have the scientist in the lab coat. He's like, he's got I don't know, let's see, he has 25,000 work hours or whatever that is that he gets to work on this actual project because he's got all the other things he's got to do, but that's just that amount of time. And if he can have a robot say, start with these 27 protocols, and then we'll update, and he can do lifetimes worth of work to develop a vaccination, or to get things into testing faster. And you think about that, like these are the very good outcomes that we want to have. Of course, there's the other end of it, and there's always bad things, but it's remarkable.
I mean, like
that
even like
people
just like
really-
diagnosis of something, right?
Yeah,
Like, Like
Yeah.
humans are fallible, right? And they make errors all the time, and that's why doctors
Yeah.
have malpractice insurance, because they miss things because they're human. And like if you have an AI that can identify, like actually that growth is cancerous, and I'm 99% confident of that. Maybe like the doctor didn't even see it in the CAT scan or something. I don't know, but like it can definitely improve outcomes, right? Or like think about like global warming and the energy crisis and things like that. Like we're working on things like fusion, which has always been like 30 years away. Like we could put an AI on the problem, right? Vast terabytes and petabytes of like whatever of data that it can go through and sift through and analyze, and like maybe it'll find something, and then tomorrow we know we have the key, we have the unlock, and now we have fusion.
It's just like the cubed version of back in the olden times, like 20 plus years ago. UC Berkeley was like, we have all this data to crunch. If you'll give us access to your CPU when you're sleeping, we can crunch more data, because that was the best way. It was to network a bunch of computers in. Now, oh my God, and you think about the amount of stuff, like in the space exploration peer review publication world has completely changed, because there's just so much stuff being done. And now we just hit the accelerator with what can be done. I mean, just like the writing part of the academic writing part, it is laborious and horrible. Now you can say, in the style of this, put these findings in, search the literature review, and a lot of your work is done.
Well, I was reading, and I might like be totally butchering the story and even have the wrong scientist, but I think it was like Watson and Crick who discovered like the double helix shape of like DNA. And like I think they're on like LSD or something like when they did that. But like the only reason the idea even like came to their head is because they happened to like read some like obscure paper by like a grad student that like hadn't have read that before. This idea existed out there in the wild. They happened to have read it, and that was like a priori to discovering the thing that they discovered. Because like humans are slow. Like how long does it take you to read a book, right? Like for an AI, it's just like there's no concept of reading. It's data. It just has access to data, and like now AI can understand language, so it can like search through that, and it can make connections that like humans just like never even could, because we have limited brain capacity, limited memory recall. And then it takes the eureka moment or something like LSD to like just connect those two neurons together and like make that connection. It's just like the pace of innovation can speed up tremendously.
You mentioned Andrew Yang earlier, and I was going to bring him up too, because he was the one guy in the last race where like he's actually thinking about things that are ahead of us. He's not talking about whatever nonsense that we're all arguing about this. He's like, you guys understand, truck driving is not going to be a thing in 20 years, not like it is now, right? And all of these things are changing. What do we do? Like one of the proposed things was, if you build a robot, you have to pay a tax to humanity, and that goes into an automatic income for humans, right? But how do we try to manage this thing?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a policymaker. I have no idea what the right way to do that. We are going to need to think about that. And I think like back when Andrew Yang was running, I don't think like the world was ready. I don't think the world realized that this is actually coming. And now I think it's like hit us like a freight train. Like it's like, okay, this stuff is real. It is happening. This is going to happen in the coming years. And like if we don't start preparing for that now, I don't know what the best policy to do that is. Whether it's Andrew Yang's or whether there's some other clever policy, we could probably ask AI to come up with something for us that would be better. Like we could. Maybe we should.
Well, I guess AI could be the president, right? They can be like, I need a good idea today. Can you help me? Help me find a policy that should be written, or write this law in less than 3,000 words instead of these, like things that nobody can read that are ridiculous. Like, you mean you didn't read the thing and you passed it? No, like we'll have Copy.AI write all that stuff and make it so that we can understand it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
What do you guys worry about? Like, what are the problems that lay ahead for you? And I'm not necessarily like the dystopian stuff, but when you guys look ahead, what are you guys scratching your head about that you're going to solve?
I mean, so what we're working on right now is like some of the stuff that we discussed earlier, right? So I mean, it's like we're a company. We're in the business to make
Right.
money. We're trying to figure out problems that like large enterprise companies have and how they can be more efficient and stuff. So like that's where a lot of our attention goes. And so I think like some of that is like they have a vast amount of sorry, one sec. Hit the wrong button. They have a vast amount of like internal knowledge, right? That
Right.
isn't like publicly available on the web. That's like, IP to them, intellectual property, and how do they make use of that, right? So like we're building systems that can connect with those systems and ingest data and understand it and process it and make it available to the AI. Because like in its existing form, it isn't always like available or like processable. You like need to go through this extra step called like vectorization a lot of times. Um, and then on the flip side of that, it's like, how do you like instead of like having like an AI assistant, which is kind of like what ChatGPT is today, and if you use like Chat by Copy.AI, it's like basically an assistant. It requires a human to interact with it to do stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
what does it look like when you don't need a human to interact with it to do stuff? Like, then this is the concept I was talking about earlier of an agent, where you assign it a task. Like right now, it's like right now you can go to Chat and you could say, write me a Instagram post to promote my podcast, right?
Right.
And it will do
Yeah.
that, and it'll write a really good Instagram post, probably better than you could write.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, here's my podcast, I want you to write, I want you to be my social media manager, right? Here are the
Right.
systems I use. You connect them to the systems, and then it's just like churning out stuff without even you having to interact with it. It's like an employee of yours, basically.
Yeah.
Right? It has access to your internal information because you've connected to that, so it knows like what your company is about, your values, the products that you make, how you pitch them, how you think about them, the things that you're working on that maybe aren't released yet, has access to all of that information. And you set it about a task. Like I've hired an AI to be my, VP of
Yeah.
marketing. What does a VP of marketing do? Right? And you can ask it. You could like
Yeah.
go to Chat right now and you ask it, what's a VP of marketing do? And you go,
Right.
now I want you to accomplish that first task. What do you need to do to accomplish that first task?
So
Well, I need
nice.
to do this, this, and this, and this. Okay, you
Yeah.
have access to these systems. Just go and do it, and then it will, right? And so like this is where things are going right now, where it's like basically you just write a job description to the AI of like what do you want it to do, and it autonomously goes and just does it, like without a human having to ask it each individual thing that you want it done.
So you're saying that I could say, I want you, my copy AI manager, to send out pitch letters to all of the people who make in excess of six figures in this zip code and talk about, the biographical interview process. Also, I want you to do 5 Instagram posts a day. I give them access to log in as me on Instagram, and they're literally publishing posts and and I can just have all these things happening. Like this really is a staff office full of people. Like the biggest problem I have, right, is that I have more hats than I have heads. And I don't have any money to hire heads. But if I've got Copy AI, all of a sudden I've got someone who can do these things for me.
Well, I mean, this is where I think like jack of all trades, master of none. What if you could be a jack of all trades and master of them all, right? Like that's kind of what it allows you to do.
Yeah.
And I will caveat this by saying that like what I described there, like
Yeah.
isn't fully ready yet. Like we're working on
But
all
we
the
know it's
pieces that will
coming.
be
I mean,
needed.
come on.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's what we're working towards, and we're not far off.
Yeah.
Like we're very like the concept is there. The concept is sound. It will work. It's not like it doesn't require some
Yeah.
like leap in technology for that to work. Like that stuff is there already.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the stuff that we're thinking about, and it's like
Yeah.
then it's like you're living in like the Jetsons future, right? Like you have
Oh my gosh.
robots that are like doing
Yeah.
all your work for
Yeah.
it. You can like jet set off to some like cloud city and like lay on the cloud
Yeah.
beach and drink a martini made by a robot or whatever you want to do.
Could you teach Copy AI or some AI? Yeah, I probably Copy AI. Could you teach it like how to do day trading and just like I want you to do day trading for me? And if not today, that's got to be coming in the near future, where it's just going to look at. You don't got to hit home runs. Just hit a base hit every day, and use these models, and then presto changeo, you're like boom, 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 money is stacking up.
Yeah.
And does that forever change the market?
I don't know, right? Because I mean, like you had like, so I mean, could you do that? Probably. Like I'm not an expert in
Yeah.
like trading or anything, so I don't even know like how to like
Sure.
answer that question without sounding like a moron. But theoretically, yes, you could. I don't know if it would change the markets because like you have that stuff going on today. Like you had what were they, like the micro traders that were like putting their servers closer and closer and closer to Wall Street so they could just get the trade in like a fraction of a second before the next guy, and then they would make like these like minuscule like multiples on their money and would add up and they would make a bunch of money. I can't remember what that was called, but and then you have like models, right? But then like you have like a model that's out there and it's making trades based on some criteria. And let's say like all the models are doing that, but it no longer becomes a winning strategy. It's like win, then you have to adopt a different strategy, a counter strategy, and then like everybody catches up, then you have to adopt yet a different strategy. But like the fundamentals of the market are such that like it doesn't like it rewards companies that actually produce stuff, or at least it used to. The last few years have kind of like thrown that out the window. But I think we'll get back to that, and it's starting to get back to that. But like in the end, it's like the market like trades and appends value to things that are actually producing tangible goods and services, and, like have a value.
And we are at a time now where we have these, you probably remember this term from a few years ago, unstoppable companies. Like these are completely automated companies that there's not even a staff, there's no office. It's just this group of AI programs that are running and they're creating revenue, they're creating a service or whatever it is. And it just goes. I mean, there's nothing to even like regulate because you can't stop it necessarily. And I think we're hitting that time where that's becoming not just a weird concept, but something that's like viably possible. Like I'm gonna find every parking ticket. You don't even need a person. You just e-commerce website, build an e-commerce website, service this thing, build these prompts, okay, and then you leave, and the thing just makes money for you all the time finding parking tickets.
I mean, there's the concept of like what's going to be the first $100 million company with a single employee. Like we'll see that soon. Yeah, but I mean, I think like then we're gonna need like the policies in place. Like how do you tax a company like that?
Yeah,
There has to be some like formula. Because I mean, like you need to redistribute wealth at that point. Because otherwise, you're gonna end up with like 4 people, like the worst situation that we're in now, that just control all the wealth. So you need something there. I don't know what that looks like again, but gotta think about it.
Well, this has been a lot of fun and interesting, and it is a crazy new world we live in. I guess I'll just let you tell me, what do you like? What do we miss? What would you want to leave us with? What's amazed you today? I guess just help us wrap up here, and let's call it a day.
Yeah, I'm like constantly amazed every day by some of the stuff that it can do, because like we get like 35,000 new people signing up for our service every single day. Like I get to talk to just like a handful of them. Right. And like I'm almost like desensitized to it now because like I do this day in, day out. But like I'm surprised every single day where somebody will come at me with some like just crazy use case. I'm like, I don't know, let's see if it can do it. And then 99% of the time it can. And I'm like, I can't believe that worked. And like so like we're like exploring the boundaries of like the technology that's already available. Like there's so much space in this universe to explore. Like we're just starting, like we're just like getting on the ship and like sailing towards the new world right now, right? Like it's fun. It's interesting.
It is fun and interesting, and there's always problems with all new things. So we accept that going in, and there's always the folks that say the world's going to end. And look, we probably will cause our own end at some point, but if not, the sun is going to kill us. So let's just have a good time.
Everything ends.
I'm going to roll the credits. Stand by 1 second. I'll be right back to you. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for